Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, let's jump right in. Drones. I mean, they seem to be everywhere now, don't they?
They really do, from hobbies to potential delivery systems, yeah.
But this explosion in drone numbers is hitting up against some pretty strict rules that already exist.
Exactly. And that's the real tension, isn't it? How easy they are to get versus the regulations that are already on the books.
So that's what we're digging into today. We want to explore what the future of drone regulation might actually look like.
Not just if it'll change, because it almost certainly will, but how. What kind of foundations are needed? What specific rules might pop up?
And also the safeguards, right?
Yeah.
The smart ways we can manage this. So think of this as your quick guide to figuring out the complexities of drone rules and what you really need to keep an eye on.
And it's crucial to remember drone regulation isn't just one thing. It cuts across so many areas.
Like aviation, obviously.
Right? Aviation, telecoms, who's liable if something goes wrong, privacy, even criminal law. It's a real mix.
Okay, so let's talk about the groundwork first. What needs to be in place for sensible future laws? One big thing seems to be a clear policy vision.
Absolutely. You can't just make rules piecemeal as new drones come out. We need a clearer idea from policymakers about what kinds of drone use we actually want to see.
And maybe what we don't want to see.
Precisely. Like, take police using drones for crowd control.
Yeah.
A clear policy would need to weigh the benefits, maybe better awareness for the police against the risks. Big risks, potentially, to privacy and freedom of assembly.
And you'd have to ask, are drones the best way to get that awareness? Is it proportional?
That's exactly it. That taps into legal ideas like subsidiarity, is it the least intrusive method?
Yeah.
And proportionality. It's not just about whether you can use a drone, but whether you should.
Makes sense. And this vision needs to spell out how the rules work day to day, give people some certainty.
Legal certainty is key for operators, for manufacturers, for everyone.
Another point is this idea of legal integration, because right now the laws feel scattered.
Scattered is a good word. You've got aviation law here, telecom rules there, privacy law somewhere else, liability. They often don't talk to each other very well.
So you could have, say, aviation rules loosened for small drones?
But if the telecom rules haven't allocated the right radio frequencies for controlling them reliably, that permission doesn't mean much in practice. It creates confusion and potential gaps where things can go wrong unintentionally.
So the suggestion is future laws need to be more joined up, making sure the different parts work together.
Yes, better integration is definitely needed. Doesn't automatically mean one single drones act, but the different legal regimes, aviation, privacy, etc., need to mesh better.
Okay, then there's the international aspect. Drones don't really respect borders, do they? The tech is global.
Completely global. Manufacturing development, it's all cross-border. So one country might have strict rules, but if the tech is easily bought from elsewhere, well, enforcement gets tricky.
We already have international agreements for planes and phones, right?
We do, in aviation and telecoms. Privacy and criminal law are much more varied country to country, but pushing for international standards for drone manufacturing and maybe even basic use seems, well, advisable.
Yeah, levels the playing field a bit. Now, tech moves so fast. How do you stop drone laws becoming obsolete almost immediately?
That's a huge challenge. The pace of change is incredible. So one idea is building in mechanisms for regular review, mandatory evaluations.
Like checking in every few years to see if the rules still make sense.
Exactly. And this could include things like formal privacy impact assessments or PIAs, which dig into the privacy risks of how drones are being used.
I've heard of sunset provisions in law, too.
Right, particularly in criminal law sometimes. A law is set to automatically expire unless Parliament actively decides to renew it.
So it forces a regular debate about whether it's still needed.
Precisely. Could be useful for specific government drone powers to make sure they remain necessary. But, sunset clauses probably aren't right for everything. Aviation law, for instance.
Too much uncertainty for businesses.
Could be, yeah. Could create economic instability if basic flight rules kept changing radically.
Okay, and the last condition here is making laws technology independent, trying to future-proof them.
That's the goal. Write laws based on principles or outcomes not tied to, say, drone model X, which might be gone next year.
Like liability law. It covers damages whether it's a falling roof tile or a drone.
Exactly. Tort law is generally technology neutral. It applies. But traditional aviation law, based on the old Chicago Convention, it's full of specifics about piloted aircraft, logbooks, things that just don't fit small drones easily. So the idea is to learn from those more adaptable legal areas.
Got it. So those are the conditions. Now let's get into the specifics. What might future laws actually say? Starting with aviation law. That seems like the front line.
It really is. The current system, mostly based on permits and exemptions for flights, is just groaning under the weight of all the drones. Enforcement is a massive headache, too.
So what's the likely direction?
It seems to be heading towards a more risk-based approach.
Meaning simpler rules for the little guys, tougher rules for the big, potentially more hazardous ones.
Basically, yes. But risk isn't just about how heavy the drone is.
Oh, what else?
Well, physics comes into it. How much energy would it have if it hit something? Its momentum. Even its shape are their sharp bits. And the rotors themselves can cause nasty injuries.
Wow. Okay, so it's quite detailed.
It could be. So you might have very light rules for small, short-range drones, maybe toys. But for heavier, faster, longer-range drones, you'd expect more requirements.
Like what?
Things like specific technical standards they have to meet, maybe certification, definitely pilot training, and more restrictions on where they can fly, altitude limits, staying away from airports, that kind of thing.
And I saw a suggestion about simplifying things by maybe getting rid of the difference between flying for fun versus flying for work.
Yeah, that distinction between recreational and commercial use is getting really blurry. A small drone taking photos could be either. Simplifying that could cut down on some complexity.
But enforcement is still tough.
Always. Police and other authorities will need better training to even know what rules apply and how to check if someone's breaking them.
Okay, moving on. Telecommunications law. Not the first thing you think of with drones, maybe.
But crucial. Drones need reliable radio links to be controlled, to send back video or data.
And right now?
They often use spectrum that's license-free, like Wi-Fi bands or nationally licensed frequencies. But with more and more drones flying, there's a real need for dedicated, internationally agreed-upon frequencies just for drone communication.
To avoid interference and help create a global market.
Exactly. Reliable communication is fundamental for safety and for more advanced uses.
All right, let's talk privacy. This is a big one for a lot of people.
Huge. And current privacy law, mostly focused on protecting personal data, might not capture all the concerns.
Like what else?
Well, just the feeling of being watched constantly, that chilling effect on public spaces, or the potential for drones to sort of dehumanize surveillance, and simple voyeurism, looking into windows.
So the question is, do existing laws, even proposed new ones, really get grips with that side of things when drones become commonplace?
It's a very open question. Think about persistent surveillance, drones recording everything in a public square, or easily hovering outside a bedroom window. Does the EU's right to be forgotten help much there? Maybe not directly.
So we might need more specific privacy assessments for different drone uses.
That seems likely, yes. Really thinking through the implications of, say, delivery drones constantly flying over backyards versus police drones monitoring a protest.
Okay, liability law. If a drone crashes into my car, or worse, injures someone, who pays?
Generally, existing tort law says the operator or owner is responsible for the damage they cause. You can sue them for compensation.
If you know who they are.
Ah, yes. That's the massive practical problem. The drone might be gone. No witnesses. How do you identify the person responsible?
Which leads back to...
Mandatory identification, yeah. Whether it's a physical plate, like a tiny license plate, or digital tag, like a transponder sending out a signal, it's seen as pretty essential for accountability.
And could tort law cover things like nuisance, a drone buzzing over your garden constantly, or privacy violations?
Essentially, yes. Those kinds of immaterial damages can sometimes be claimed under tort law, though it can be more complex than claiming for physical damage. And of course, if the drone crashed because it was faulty,
then the manufacturer could be on the hook?
Could be, under product liability rules. And looking forward, mandatory liability insurance for drone operators is definitely something being discussed, similar to car insurance.
Right. Finally, criminal law. Seems like some bad drone behavior is already illegal, right?
Yeah.
Trespassing, spying.
Absolutely. Existing laws against trespassing, voyeurism being a peeping Tom, property damage, assault, they can all apply if a drone is used to commit those crimes.
But maybe the penalties need rethinking.
Possibly. Some drone-related threats could be very serious. Think about disrupting airports or potential terrorist use. So evaluating if maximum sentences are adequate might be necessary.
And what about the government using drones? Police, security services?
That needs a really clear legal basis. Under human rights law, like Article 8 of the European Convention, any interference with privacy has to be lawful, necessary for a legitimate aim, and proportionate.
So laws allowing police drone surveillance need to be very specific.
Very specific, clearly outlining when and how they can be used, with oversight. And again, the principles of subsidiarity and proportionality apply strongly. Is the drone necessary, or could they achieve the aim another way? Is the intrusion justified by the goal? And the law needs to be predictable. People should be able to foresee how this tech might be used against them.
Okay, that covers a lot of ground on the potential laws themselves. Now let's shift to specific safeguards. Protections. We mentioned privacy impact assessments already.
Yes, PIAs. They're a tool, really, a structured way to map out the privacy risks before a particular drone application gets rolled out widely. The results can then feed into shaping the laws or adding other specific safeguards.
And then there's this idea of privacy by design, building privacy in from the start.
Exactly. And using privacy-enhancing technologies, or PETs,
Like
like software on the drone itself that automatically blurs out faces or license plates in the video it records. Technology designed to minimize privacy intrusion.
And geofencing fits in here too.
Geofencing is a classic example of privacy by design. It uses GPS and software to create virtual fences in the sky.
So the drone just won't fly into certain areas.
Right. It can limit range, set altitude ceilings, create no-fly zones around airports, prisons, or even temporary ones, say, over a stadium during a match.
Wow, so the drone itself could almost become a guide, preventing accidental rule breaking. That's a really interesting concept. It can make it much easier for casual users to stay legal.
It definitely has that potential. It could enforce aviation rules automatically in a way, but there are challenges.
Like what?
Well, whose geofence map do you use? Different manufacturers might have different boundaries, leading to confusion. Will manufacturers actually build it in reliably, and who pays for maintaining the maps? And, of course, determined users might figure out how to disable it.
Hack the drone, basically.
Essentially, yes. So it's not foolproof, but it's a potentially powerful tool.
Okay, beyond privacy tech, what other kinds of safeguards are being discussed? Things for safety, maybe?
Yeah, infrastructure is one. Just like we have roads for cars, maybe we need designated drone airways or corridors, especially in busy areas. Specific takeoff and landing sites, clearly marked flight zones. It could all help manage the traffic and increase safety.
Makes sense. What about just knowing what drone you're seeing?
Recognizability and identifiability, that's important. Maybe simple things like distinct colors for police drones versus fire service drones versus commercial delivery drones.
And the mandatory ID we talked about for liability.
Yes, license plates or digital tags, crucial not just for liability, but also just getting a lost drone back to its owner.
Good point. And what about us, the public? How do we fit into this?
Public awareness and education are vital. People need to understand what drones can do, the benefits and the risks. It helps manage expectations and build acceptance.
And education for drone users themselves.
Definitely, especially non-professionals. Making sure they know the basic rules, maybe simple, mandatory online training or tests for certain types of drones. Civil aviation authorities could help by putting out really clear infographics, Drone Rules 101.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple and accessible. And lastly, we'll likely see more requirements around technical specs for the drones themselves, certification processes, and pilot training, probably scaling up depending on the drone's risk level, much like we already have for licensed commercial pilots.
So wrapping this all up, it really sounds like there's no single magic bullet for drone regulation.
Not at all. It's going to be a combination platter.
Evolving laws in all those areas, aviation, telecoms, privacy, liability, criminal law, plus these practical safeguards. The impact assessments, the tech solutions like geofencing, mandatory ID, public education.
It's a whole package, and getting that package right is crucial if we want to integrate drones safely and responsibly. So, as you see more drones buzzing around, understanding these potential rules and safeguards is, well, pretty important for knowing how your safety and privacy are being considered.
It really is. It kind of makes you think, back to when cars first appeared, maybe.
How so?
Well, it took ages, decades, a century maybe, to develop all the infrastructure and rules we take for granted now. Roads, traffic lights, driving tests, insurance.
That's a great analogy, yeah.
It feels like we're at that kind of starting point with drones, but everything's moving so much faster, the technology isn't waiting around.
That's the key difference, isn't it? The speed. We can imagine that future drone infrastructure, air routes, insurance becoming standard, pilot training, but we probably don't have a century to figure it out this time.
So the provocative thought maybe is, how quickly can our society, our laws, our infrastructure actually adapt to this technology taking to the skies so rapidly?
Exactly. That's the question to ponder as you look up and see more drones joining the birds. How fast can we adjust?